Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michael Wilson, and I'm the webinar producer for KardasLarson. Today's session is Family Business Success. We'll spend the next 30 minutes exploring tips for navigating your family business today and preparing for the future. Now for a few housekeeping notes. Everyone on the line is muted by default. You can please download the presentation and respond to polls when prompted. You can utilize the question box to ask and answer questions of our panelists. Also, please follow KardasLarson on LinkedIn to receive information about future webinars. And we value your feedback, so please take the survey that you'll receive after the webinar. Your email will contain a link to this recording. Now let's meet your presenters. Lisa Schipani and Lois Krause have spent many years helping organizations of all types and sizes to successfully develop and grow both their people and their businesses. Lois has special expertise in labor law management, while Lisa's proficiency is in leveraging employee performance and development. Both of your presenters are committed to helping you maximize performance. Now I'll turn it over to Lois to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Many of you may be wondering why we are discussing family business success today. Well, we have found that businesses today have a great deal of challenges for them, and businesses built around family have even more challenges than most. When you think of family businesses, you usually think of that local family restaurant in the town center with the great ethnic food. And in reality, there are a large number of businesses, small, medium, and large, publicly traded and privately owned, that were started with and continue to be run by family members. Today, we are seeing a significant number of new, small, startup businesses. This trend spans all industries and generally begins when two people come together to provide the world with products, the latest and greatest mousetrap, or services, coaching, marketing, all designed to help us live prosperous, productive lives. Often the idea is hatched by one person who needs help getting it off the ground. Asking for help from someone they trust, their spouse, parent, brother, or sister, is naturally the next step. The family member agrees to lend a hand. Then, what do we have? Yes, a family business. Today, we're going to be covering certain things like working together with multiple generations and implementing new ideas for growth and minimizing the family conflict in the workplace, and how to hire family members. And then we will talk about turning the business over to the next generation. So let's talk about a couple of successful businesses with family business roots. Years ago, the mega giant Johnson & Johnson began in 1886 with three brothers in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Johnson & Johnson grew significantly and successfully as a family business for many years. Today, it is no longer run by a family member. And I have a good friend who works in the organization and reports that many of the family values are alive and well. How about retail? Brooks Brothers Clothing. Yep, a family business which began with two brothers in 1818 with one store in New York City. But in 1833, one of the brothers brought in his sons to continue the business. Lisa, haven't you had the pleasure of working with Brooks Brothers? Can you describe the culture there? Were there still feelings of family business even though it was a large organization?
Absolutely, Lois. The Delvecchio family, who currently owns Brooks Brothers, has brought the organization full circle. They've been at the helm for the last 14 years. And in fact, Claudio Delvecchio, the CEO and owner, has recently brought his son into the business to get him ready to take the reins. Claudio's looking at retiring probably over the next 7 to 10 years, so he brought his son in early enough so that he could learn all parts of the business and be ready when it's time. The organization definitely has a family feel with a fairly paternalistic culture, both a blessing and a curse. So we'd like to get some sense from you in terms of how long your family business has been in existence. So take a moment and let us know, has it been less than 10 years, 10 to 20 years, or more than 20 years? It looks like all of you have family businesses that have been in existence for more than 20 years. Congratulations. You're doing a lot of things right. And hopefully today you will learn some additional best practices to help your business continue for at least another 20 years.
So you see, these are some examples of successful family businesses. Unfortunately, there are also some businesses that do not make it. We do not have names for those because they are too numerous to name. And why didn't they make it? They didn't know how to manage a business with family involved without the dysfunction of the family getting in the way. I have firsthand experience. Our family business, Aberle Schwab and Company, a double family business with my grandfather, grandmother, father, and uncle, as well as the Schwab family, was one of the businesses that didn't succeed long enough for me to get involved, although it did last for 2 generations. Most people do not realize that in their family, there are certain assumptions about each person's role and worth, and much of that may depend on the birth order of siblings or the roles the parents or grandparents set out for all to follow. The women are good at this, and the men are good at that, so that is where they're relegated within the business. These roles are usually set up because the original personalities and abilities of the ones who began the business. I know I took after my father much more than I did my mother, but had the family business survived for me to go into it, I do not know how my personality traits and basic abilities and interests would have been directed. I'll tell you a little story. My father was the baby of the family in the food brokerage business his father ran, and where his older brother worked after he came back from the service in the Army. My father suggested that they invest in medical insurance when it first came out for everyone because it was very inexpensive and could be helpful in keeping the wealth in the family and the business. My grandfather told him that was a ridiculous idea and they could well afford to pay their own way. My grandfather looked at it as if it was welfare at the time. Unfortunately, he and my grandmother had some medical issues and wound up spending most of their money on medical bills. Then they asked my father to find a way to save the business after the money had been spent. Now I'd like to turn this over to Lisa to share some family business statistics with you. Lisa?
Thanks, Lois. So as I was putting this research together, I found it very interesting that there are 1.2 million husband and wife teams running companies. Also, family businesses comprise 90% of all business enterprises in North America and 62% of the total U.S. population. Interestingly, only 30% of family businesses in America will be passing the reins to the next generation, even though close to 70% would like to keep their business in the family. By the 3rd generation, only 12% of family businesses in the U.S. are typically still viable, and 47% of organizations surveyed have no succession plans in place.
Okay. We would like to ask you to take a poll and to find out what your family business challenges are. Let's choose from none of the family members want to join the business, and you can check any of and all of these if they apply. An external advisory board is needed. Family members lack the skill and passion to succeed. Millennial family members are joining the business, and tension exists between the family members affecting morale. Okay, it seems that most of you have identified the last 4 challenges as being common to your business, and no one seems to have problems with the first challenge. Very interesting. Now, every family business has at least one of these challenges, and most of them have all of them. I worked with a company where the founder was the CEO, CTO, and chairman of the board. And he was so because he developed a scientific product that was innovative and then taught himself how to bring it to market to become profitable. One of his sons came on board after many years and did not have that scientific mind, but was wonderful at managing people and multiple priorities very well. He was not listened to when he first came on board because his brother was the science whiz, but he proved his worth after I helped the organization see how they had to recognize people's individual strengths, and the son's was on the business side. The son is currently the president of the company and managing this global organization from another country and doing quite well. So let's talk about the best practices for helping a family business survive and thrive. You cannot have people working together as a cohesive team unless you have the right people on the team. Family business owners often believe just because someone is in the family, they are the right person for the job. Would you just hire anyone off the street to come in and run your IT department because they seem to know how to set up their smartphone easily and they showed you how to do it? I don't think so. I think you would have looked at their education and their experience before hiring them. You need to do the same with family members. All family members have strengths and challenges like the rest of the employee base. Play to their strengths and minimize their challenges by pairing them with other employees for certain projects, or keep them off the team they have no expertise or interest in. Often, parents begin a business because they decide to do something they feel passionate about and may be quite successful. Then they think their children will have the same passion. And quite honestly, many are just not that interested in the business. When getting other generations involved, listen to the younger generation and actually hear them if they tell you that they have interests in other areas. It will save a lot of heartache down the road and may actually help your business succeed. On the other side, if they do have interest in the organization, make sure you listen to everyone's input and evaluate it in an objective manner. Just because the baby of the family came up with an idea, it does not mean that it can't be a good idea. The oldest child is not always the smartest or the most creative. Listen to everyone's ideas. Even if the oldest is the smartest or the most creative, they may not be as invested in this segment of the business as others are. Just because the founders and parents have been doing it this way successfully for years does not mean it must continue in this manner for the future. Times change and markets change. If you do not keep up with the market, or hopefully lead the market, you will not continue to be successful for much longer. I am not saying you should not listen to the founders either. They were the ones with the passion to begin with, and often they have a lot of expertise in one specific part of the business. You want to have frequent communications about everyone's passions and strengths to ensure everyone in the organization gets to do their best. Trust the founder with their specific expertise to operate that area well, and have the brothers, wives, children, etc. focus on their strengths, perhaps in other areas of the business. You need to keep the communication open. Sometimes you need to have an outside objective professional guide you through this assessment. Another great way to mitigate these types of mistakes is to make sure you have professional advice and objective research before you make any decisions that will affect the growth of the organization. As stated before, sometimes you may need advice from outside of the family to help you see the things from an objective perspective. Create a board of directors or advisors with people from outside of the family to help to keep you focused on business, not on family squabbles. Open communication with all of your employees, whether they are family members or not, will go a long way to helping you gain the needed objective advice you may need in various areas. This will help the business in two ways. One, it will give you ideas from a perspective that would be more objective as it is from someone outside of the family. And 2, it will create a culture within the organization of collaboration and inclusion. It will help to eliminate that us versus them mentality that many family businesses experience. Often the employees that are not family members will be quiet in front of family members or side with one family member or another, depending on who they think will prevail. And some great ideas or advice will be lost. If you want to have family business, include everyone in the family. All employees should feel as if they are part of the larger family, the business family. There needs to be a culture of trust at all levels. You should also strive to have the business stay in the business and the family in the family. I happen to have married into a family business, and I do not remember a holiday dinner without some talk about the business. Often, it was all that was discussed. I know it is very hard. Try not to do it. Try to separate them so that you have some downtime. It helps you to be more objective when you are actually at the business, involved in running it. This will also help to keep the family squabbles out of the business. Just because you had an argument with a family member at home, it does not belong in the workplace. It robs you of your objectivity and harms the culture and the atmosphere of a productive business. Separate them as much as possible. If you vow to keep this and set it up as one of your non-negotiable values, you will be less likely to have it creep into the business or the business into the family. You should create some buzzword for someone to use to let everyone know that this is not the proper venue. Then table it for the correct place, whether it be family or business. We have helped some clients to create some of these non-negotiable values and communication buzzwords. And they even post some of these values on the wall to remind them. Now, we have touched on many of the pitfalls and best practices for most of the outline items. But now we would like to address succession planning of the business. Lisa, would you like to lead us in some best practices for family business succession planning?
I'd be delighted, Lois. Thank you. So this is very relevant. I actually Lois and I met with a prospective client yesterday, and this was a family-founded business, and a successor has not been named. Everyone's making an assumption that the son will be the successor, and yet the son has not been tapped by his dad, and his dad says that he'll make the succession plan when he's ready. So it's really critical to plan for succession. And if you look back at those statistics that we talked about earlier, with 47% of organizations surveyed having no succession plan in place, and that by the third generation, only 12% of family businesses in the U.S. are typically viable. Succession planning really is critical to continue that legacy. So in terms of succession planning, you want to first approach it with very transparent communication so that there are not any hurt feelings among the family members as well as the non-family members. You want to really identify those critical roles for which you need successors, and then identify possible successors. And again, back to Lois's best practices, focus on knowledge, skills, and abilities, and if the family member has interest in moving forward with the organization. You also want to provide development opportunities. So what do we need to do to fill in the gaps of the learning that successors need? Do they need to spend time in different areas of the business? Or perhaps do they need to work for another company to gain the needed experience? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. In fact, the story I was telling you about Claudio Del, his son worked in another business before joining Brooks Brothers for just that reason. And sometimes you may need to name an interim person. If you need a successor more quickly than someone's going to be ready to take those reins, you may consider an interim person, and looking to your board for that type of role might be a great place to start. And again, as I mentioned, transparent communication is so important so that everyone understands who the successor is and what we're doing to get that successor ready so that people feel comfortable with what's going on. So in summary here, when you think about family businesses, and again, congratulations to all of you who've been a part of a family business for 20 years or more. Family businesses are very important to our economy and also to our employment opportunities. And really taking a step back and looking at where you are and thinking about some of Lois's best practices will help you shape your family business and create your legacy for generations to come. And Michael, let's open this up to questions.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. And Lisa, we'll stay with you for the first question. How do you know if the younger generation is not interested in the business if they never said anything?
Excellent question, Michael. Again, transparent communication. Ask them. You should ask all of your family members if they're interested in continuing in the business, what might be their career aspirations, so that you know, and then you can plan ahead and ensure that they receive the appropriate developmental opportunities based on their knowledge, skills, and abilities so that they are ready for increasing roles. And you have to have honest, open dialogue if you don't feel they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to take on those roles.
Thank you. Lois, maybe you can expand a little bit on the idea of roles within a family. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, Michael. Many times people have specific roles that they play within their family, like the middle child is usually the person that tries to keep the peace. If it's a paternalistic family, whatever the father says goes, and if it's a maternalistic family, whatever the mother says goes, and that those roles carry over into the business, and it's just expected that everybody in the business is going to follow those same role models that they have when they're in the family, and that's not necessarily the best place for them. Doesn't necessarily play to their strengths.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, how would you approach a poor performance situation with a family member who's being viewed as the successor?
I go back to my honest, open communication, really talking to that person about their performance and that they may not be a fit in the organization and that they are not a fit to be a successor, and really helping them to either find their place in the organization or to find something outside of the family business. But again, it's so important that you have honest, open dialogue. And I know that that's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone, and even more so when it's a family member. But think about this. If you don't have that honest, open dialogue, you're putting the family business at risk.
Okay, thank you. Lois, how can you have such open communication with other employees that are at lower levels?
Well, Michael, that can be a challenge, but what you really need to do is have open communication across the board. Let it be known that this is your culture, that having meetings where you display the numbers and where you have you allow everybody to raise their hand and give an idea, and not have anybody criticized for their ideas. And that's just general good business for all businesses, but you have to be especially cognizant of this in the family business to ward off that us versus them. You really need to have the open communication for everybody. And lower level people, you'd be very surprised how great ideas that they can contribute, and you really need to listen to them. And then, have them work with you towards either developing it or explain to them why it can't be developed for one reason or another.
And Lisa, do you have anything to add about what it's like for non-family members working in a family business, and any advice for working with them?
Another great question. I think that when you are a non-family member as part of a family business, you have to really understand that the family started the business, and you need to respect their wishes. You may have some wonderful ideas that you pitch, and you have fabulous influence skills. In the end, the owner of the business is going to make a decision whether they want to move forward with that idea or whether they don't. And in my time at Brooks Brothers, in an HR role, I was often going to the owner of the organization and saying, this is the situation, this is how I think that we should proceed, and this is the risk that we're taking if we don't proceed in this manner. And he was always grateful for me sharing all of those points, and in the end, he made his final decision. Sometimes he went with what was proposed, and other times he said, I'm willing to take the risk to do it this way, which was his way.
Okay.
And that's a good point. That's a good point, Lisa, because sometimes the employees have to know that the last decision rests with the owner.
Absolutely. Okay. And Lois, final question I'll give to you, which is, how do you really go about finding outside board members or advisors if you have partners outside the family?
Well, obviously you have to discuss this with your partners outside the family, and but you need to go to like organizations that are like if you have a consulting service business for human resources like KardasLarson, you might go to, if we were a family business, you'd go to like a SHRM chapter to find people there that have expertise in your business, and people that you've worked with to bring them in. Or you might go talk to your accountant that utilizes somebody that has another client that has that does the same type of business you do, and ask for referrals. A lot of it is networking, but then you have to pass it by your outside partners and discuss with them. But you have to make the case of, this is what we need. We need some objective viewpoints. We need somebody to come in here, and maybe you have some of those partners be that are outside the family, that are partners in the business, be some of the advisors in some of the areas that they have expertise in. Inclusion, just remember inclusion. Open communication and inclusion are the things that you want to look for, and look for expertise in a specific area.
Okay, thank you, Lois. And thank all of you for attending this KardasLarson webinar. We encourage you to follow KardasLarson on LinkedIn to receive information on future webinars, compliance updates, and our speaking engagements. Please be on the lookout for an email later with a survey and a recording of this presentation. And download the presentation from the handout section if you haven't had a chance yet. Thank you. We're now signing off.